The latest Acer Swift 3, 2020, is an excellent ultrabook for the masses, made better thanks to its accessible price, thin and lightweight design, and pretty decent battery life. It might be a budget machine, but the Acer Swift 3, 2020, outperforms other laptops in its price range. Whereas most cheap laptops will provide a barely passable computing experience, the Swift line proves that just because a machine comes with a low price tag doesn't mean it can't be a solid computer as well. Additionally, it also makes for a solid ultrabook. However, budget laptops do come with more limitations than their more expensive siblings, and the Acer Swift 3, 2020, is no exception. It's inherited some of its predecessors' flaws, such as weak-sounding, downward-facing speakers. But it's improved on its predecessor as well, by updating the performance and battery life, without adjusting the price. The Swift 3 might not be the Dell XPS 13, but it will get you fairly close for a fraction of the price. Basically, if you want that ultrabook form factor for a fantastic value, the Acer Swift 3, 2020, is an excellent choice, particularly if you're on a limited budget. The 14-inch Acer Swift 3, 2020, model we reviewed is the $699 model, around £565, 1,070 Australian dollars, which features a 10th General Intel Core i5-1035G1 processor, 8GB of DDR4 RAM, integrated Intel UHD graphics, and a 512GB M.2 key SSD. The cheapest Swift 3 configuration, available for $499, around £405, 765 Australian dollars, features an AMD Ryzen 5 3500, 4GB of DDR4 RAM, and AMD Radeon Vega 8 graphics. For the $799 version, around £645, 1,220 Australian dollars, the Acer Swift 3 comes packed with the 10th General Intel Core i5-1035G4 CPU, 8GB of DDR4 SD RAM, an M.2 key 512GB SSD with Intel Iris Plus graphics. Acer continued its minimalist design aesthetic with this year's Acer Swift 3. Definitely taking a cue from the Apple MacBook Air, the thin, lightweight aluminum chassis should feel familiar to anyone acquainted with early Acer Swift 3 models. The matte silver finish with polished Acer logo on the back is about as flashy as the laptop gets, and, for some, that's exactly what they're looking for. Needless to say, you will have to supply the personality yourself. The Swift 3 measures it at 12.6 by 8.5 by 0.6 inches and weighs 2.7 pounds, making the device incredibly portable without feeling flimsy. In fact, once our cat got bored with the box and decided to investigate the power cable, she brought the open, running laptop down off a 3.5-foot tall desk onto a hardwood floor and bolted, leaving no visible or noticeable damage to the exterior or the internals of the laptop. While not in any way recommended as a test to run on your own machine, it's good to know that there's a chance that the Acer Swift 3 will survive in the real world. Advertisement. Speaking of opening it up, the Island-style keyboard features responsive, chiclet keys and a Windows Hello-enabled fingerprint scanner. While some might find the keyboard to be a bit cramped, the keys are spaced well for a laptop of its size and the black keys are backlit with soft white LEDs for better visibility. The trackpad is a good size and responds well during everyday, general use. It also handled itself pretty well in a few PC gaming sessions of Stellaris and Civilization V, but anything more than that will need a separate mouse or gamepad. As for ports, Acer loaded up 2020 Swift 3 with a USB 2.0, a USB 3.0, and a USB-C Thunderbolt 3 port to go along with an HDMI port and headphone mic jack. There's no SD card reader or optical drive, but that's pretty typical of an ultrabook nowadays. The Swift 3 features a 14-inch Full HD, 1920 by 1080 display that isn't the crispest on the market, but which is more than enough for most purposes. Several hours of HD streaming movies looked excellent, bright enough in all but the most direct sunlight. That display's color profile doesn't stand out necessarily, but it feels like it at least meets the standard of a modern 1080p display. The bezels along the sides and top aren't the thinnest available right now, but they aren't the thickest either. The bottom bezel is the largest, but it isn't awful. The total screen real estate feels appropriate for the overall size of the laptop, so it never gets to feeling like things are more cramped than they should be for a 14-inch display. In fact, having two application windows open side by side on screen was absolutely doable with minimal horizontal scroll on Chrome or Microsoft Word. As for the webcam and built-in mic, both are functional, if modest. Neither are good enough for Twitch streaming, professional YouTube broadcasting, or anything along those lines, but they are more than adequate for teleconferencing through Zoom or similar for work purposes. After running the Acer Swift 3 through a suite of benchmark tests for its CPU, GPU, and battery, we're pleased to say that there's a measurable improvement over last year's model. When it comes to playing video and general use, there's little to complain about with the Acer Swift 3. Running the notoriously resource-hogging Google Chrome with 24 tabs open was handled smoothly by the Swift 3, even when one of those tabs was playing through a Udemy course and another had an active Slack channel going. The system seemed to struggle a bit when trying to run several advertising-heavy tabs, but the same can be said of most systems, and, really, that's more of a societal problem than one limited to a single Acer laptop. The Acer Swift 3 2020 also handled some light gaming through Steam without any trouble and kept a solid frame rate going through the midpoint of a game of Stellaries, but when that endgame crisis hits and the Intel UHD graphics GPU is trying to track 200-plus corvettes and destroyers weaving between a couple of dozen capital ships shooting lasers and fusion torpedoes, the fans are going to kick in and you will get a noticeable drop in responsiveness. Meanwhile, the Swift 3 handled multimedia content creation pretty well for a system with 8 GB of RAM. Loading up Photoshop and doing basic photo editing with a dozen or so open files was pretty smooth without any hang-ups. The biggest improvement we saw over last year's Acer Swift 3 came in the battery department. Our battery life test, where we loop a 1080p video, ran for 7 hours and 6 minutes, about the same as older models of the Swift 3, but on the PC Mark X battery test, the Swift 3 ran for 6 hours and 12 minutes on performance mode with a balanced power profile and made it a full 8 hours on a modest battery saver mode and balanced power profile. As far as thermal performance, the Swift 3 runs comfortably and never gets noticeably warm, even under duress, and the laptop's fans are effective and whisper quiet while actively cooling everything. Advertisement. The hottest part of the laptop is on the bottom rear of the machine by the battery, so the most likely time you'll notice any heat buildup will be if you're gaming or video editing a project while sitting up in bed with the laptop on your legs. Even then, it won't get uncomfortably hot the way others might. Where the Swift 3 comes up short is its speakers, unfortunately. The audio from the laptop is tinny with almost no low end, so it all comes off sounding somewhat flat. It's fine for listening to Spotify or YouTube while working on a project or typing up a report, but on max volume it's barely audible a room or two away. And that is assuming the Swift 3 is sitting on a flat table with no obstruction or tablecloth to muffle it. With the downward-facing speakers, sitting the Swift 3 on a bed significantly muffles the sound. This has been a recurring problem with a lot of laptops over the years, and the Acer Swift 3 is no different, but it's something that should have been addressed by now. Ultrabooks have always been a bit more of a premium laptop, but the Acer Swift 3 aims at bringing a quality Ultrabook to the wider, more budget-conscious consumer. It's definitely succeeded in this respect. The compact dimensions and lightweight of the Acer Swift 3 make it one of the most portable laptops out there right now, making it perfect for students running back and forth around campus or for freelance professionals on the go. While not quite as refined as the MacBook Air, it's not out of the question that the Acer Swift 3 could be mistaken for one if you don't look too closely. You want something that will game as hard as it works. We always want it all when it comes to our tech, but it's important to know what the Acer Swift 3 isn't. If you're looking for a laptop for esports, this ain't it, chief. There's just no getting around the serviceable speakers. You will hear what you need to hear while actively working on the Swift 3, but if you're going to spend the day cleaning around the house, this should be your last choice for a stereo unless the alternative is an alarm clock radio.